So I just did an S&P Bollinger Band thing. I want to take a look at the Bollinger Bands on the Nasdaq and go back to the dot-com bubble and take a look at this one. And this one is much cleaner and easier to look at than what we had on the other one. So this is Brian Lewis with MMT Investing, and things just changed. All right, so to go over the general idea here, if you're above this middle part, if you're up here, that's bullish. If you're down here, that's bearish. So this run up to the top of the Nasdaq bubble or the dot-com bubble is all up here on the bullish side, and you get the wiggles, and it'll hit the peaks generally. The ups and the downs will hit the actual peaks on the chart. Not always. Yeah, that one hits. And here, this one. So we get a lower high here, and this is where we switch over to bear territory at this peak to this peak. And the crossover is right there on that crazy stuff. So you get a pretty normal kind of bullish before the bubble, bearish, and then this is on the dailies. So this is the smaller cycles. This isn't the whole long-term one. And then you get a little bull run here on the bull side, and then you get a lot of bear stuff here at the end, and this is all this stuff. So you can see here in the Nasdaq, the activity on the way up is mostly against the top edge of the Bollinger Bands. A little volatility, but it sticks to the top pretty well. And then on the way down, it sticks to the bottom. And then we get a little bull run here, but it's not sticking to the top. It just bounces off the top. And then it starts sticking to the bottom again, bounce, sticking to the bottom, bounce, sticking to the bottom until we get out of here. And that's the general look for a Bollinger Band in a bull market is going to be all along the top, and in a bear market, it's going to be all along the bottom. And this is a major bubble, so this is a big bull and bear market. And then it's not over yet, so we get some more. We get some more bull here, and then we go back to bear land and stick to the bottom, all the way down to here, which is pretty interesting. And that's how far out from 00 to, yeah, 02. So it's not even 2 years. This one, the whole bubble is not even 2 years to get to the bottom. And then you see we start a new bull market line that's steeper, and then this is our way up to the housing bubble, and it's outside of a couple credit contractions, it's mostly sticking to the top edge on the whole way up. And then we get the housing bubble here, and the housing bubble is a little bit muted on the Nasdaq chart, but you can take a look, and this might be a good look at what we're getting now. It's a really wide band, and we did an aggressive drop and then crossed right over and hit the top immediately. That's closer to what we're getting now on our chart. And then it did a couple swings and then came down here, and then yeah, this is a pretty wild one. Like, this is a really good bull run in the middle of a bear market here where we're actually against the top. But usually in a bear market, you're going to get most of the activity is going to be along this bottom edge, and then we get this kind of W shape here. I like to circle these W's. And this is a bear trap W. And then these new trend lines tend to start after the bear trap W shape completes. And then we get a new trend line. So the Nasdaq, this is a pretty clean way to look at the Bollinger Bands. Let's just circle some things here. So it's mostly bullish here on the Nasdaq coming into the housing crisis. The vast majority of the activity is bull side coming in, and then this is a pretty big bull move here during the crash, but of course most of the activity in the crash is going to be on the bear side. And so that's important to see, even if you're in a long-term bear market, when you get out here up onto the bull side, you get these kind of shapes, and we get kind of a top here on this one and a reversal. So yeah, this is a good thing to look at here. And this is a pretty tight bull run where it sticks to the top and gets way up here. And these ones didn't quite make it back up. Okay, so that's just kind of a look at when you're bullish and when you're bearish. And the angle of the slope is kind of determined by how far away you are from the center line. So if you're way down here, it's a steep one. And if you're up here, it's getting steeper on the way up. And then let me go to the current bubble, and then we'll go back and look at these on the weeklies and see if there's anything cool. Okay, so here's our current thing. So we can look at, here's Volmageddon on the Nasdaq. It's pretty muted. And it barely goes into bear territory here. And then the big 2018 crash is definitely bear territory, but it's just one cycle. But other than that, I mean, we get, we get a 12-year bull run where almost all the activity for 12 years is on the top side of this line. And now we get this insane rip here, but we're back up here above where we started on the Nasdaq and the S&P. And so this is bull territory up here on the MACD. And then it looks a little more bullish on the Nasdaq here than it did on the S&P, because we are starting to stick to this top here and then kind of bounce, and then we have to kind of see where we go here, if this is going to turn over or not, and what kind of shape to kind of expect if it turns over. I don't know. So if you're a bull, again, you're going to want to stay up here on the bull side, and any kind of movement that stays on the bull side is going to be bullish, and it's going to go up. And if it starts going down, the downward movement crossing is going to pull it back down to the bear side. And then any bear movement, once you're below that line, would be bearish downward movements. So right now we're on the bull side. And this, the red line kind of tells you if you're on the bull side or the bear side. And the blue line is indicating crossovers. And when the blue line crossovers, that's when it switches. And it doesn't mean the red line is going to dive above or below. It just means you're going to go up or down. The blue line indicates when the red line is going to switch directions, basically, when it crosses over. And it's a pretty good indicator at predicting the red line switching over. And we are getting away from it. We were coming down, and now we're kind of separating away a little bit. And the red line is getting getting steeper today. It's not turning over, it's turning up right now. So this looks bullish on the MACD on the dailies. So let's go out and take a look on the kind of the weekly and see the long-term kind of cyclical. I'll show you on the weekly. Okay, so this is a lot better here for sort of, instead of looking at the waves up and down inside of the cycles and trying to figure out if you're bullish or bearish, this is taking a more of a long-term look across a bunch of cycles, and it's pretty easy to see that you get a mess of bull side activity up to the top of the Nasdaq bubble here, up to the peak, and then from the peak down to the bottom and all the way to like this little peak here, I guess, or this one. This is all the bear side, downside of the Nasdaq bubble, and that's pretty common to get a lot more bull side activity. I mean, you can get whatever it is, 10 years of kind of bull side activity, and then you get like 3 years of bear side activity, and that's pretty normal. Not all the time. And then this is the housing bubble, so we get a bunch of bull activity, and then the downside of the housing bubble is on this side. And so this is an interesting one here because you can see that the sharp part of the Nasdaq bubble, of the dot-com bubble, it gets sharp immediately, and then it kind of, the end of the bubble just kind of hops, and it didn't even go negative on the immediate drop here. It did a really big bounce on the bull side before it even went negative, and you get the sharp peak early and then kind of trails off. Whereas in the housing bubble, you get a little peak early and then a big peak later. So you can see there's not that much of a pattern to it on the MACD other than just are you on the bull side or the bear side, and are you switching over or not? Because the peak to the next peak over on this side, when you're switching over, like this was the bottom, and this is going to be all bull activity switching over to the bull side. Or like here, there's a peak, and it's going to be bear activity while you're switching over to the bear side. And then as long as you stay on the bear side, it's going to be bearish. But then you get the peak here, and it's bullish. Switching over to the bull side is bullish. So trying to find those crossovers is difficult. And then again, you can use the blue line to indicate when the red line is going to switch directions, but it's not going to tell you if the red line is going to cross over into the other side of the chart or not. That you just have to get lucky or something. The MACD doesn't tell you if it's going to go to the bull side or the bear side. So let's take a look at our current bubble, and then obviously we got the 12-year bull market or whatever it was, 10 years, all on the bull side for the most part. And we get those couple euro dollar contractions here, and this 2018 crash went super bearish here, but the Nasdaq is super bullish, more so than the S&P. The S&P had quite a few. There's one little euro dollar contraction here. Let's see where we are on this thing. Okay, so the Nasdaq, it looks very different than the S&P in a couple of ways. Like this thing is on the bull side and it's switching to bullish here. So the Nasdaq just barely went into the bear side on the crash, and you can see that here. It didn't even make it down to the same trend line that the S&P did. The S&P broke this trend line and came back up to here, and the Nasdaq didn't even make it down to that trend line. It's back up here on this trend line. So that's a completely different look on the Nasdaq than on the S&P, which is really interesting, and it's going to be really useful to compare these two charts, I think, because the timing of the moves is going to be the same, but the height and sort of the trend lines that they're acting on is a little bit different. So this is really interesting. And it looks right now like it's on the bull side again, and the red line is turning up, and we've got a crossover here. And so that looks bullish for the Nasdaq here to be up here and to be turning back up, and we've already crossed over and gone green here. So yeah, this is the bear side, and we've already switched back over to the bull side and crossed over, and we're reversing this red line. That looks really bullish on the Nasdaq right here. And then we have these trend lines here. So we swung down and hit this one, and we haven't really terminated any of the trend lines on the Nasdaq yet. We've just gotten underneath the first one, and we're just testing it now. for the bull market lines. And this is just off the Volmageddon bottom here, this line, and we're testing it now. And we will have to see, what kind of action we get in this area on the Nasdaq, which should be pretty interesting. But we have gotten rid of this blow off top line. Like that line is out of play now. Now we're acting along this trend line, and we'll see what that looks like. Yeah, so this is a super steep reaction to the drop that happened, but the action along this direction will be more along this trend line, and it's not going to be steep action like on this trend line, like forever up that way. Like we're just reacting and getting back onto this trend line here and checking this out and seeing what it is going to do. Yeah, so that's a cool look on the weeklies here on the Nasdaq chart. And these are the same credit contraction cycles and macroeconomics, the health situation on this Nasdaq chart as we're going to get on the S&P. And so this is a really cool look at a specific sector behaving kind of differently than the market aggregate. And obviously oil is doing terrible right now. And then the Nasdaq has been doing pretty well. And that's usually a sector that does not do that well in contractions, and it's doing well in this contraction, which is really interesting. And energy usually does poorly in contractions, but not that poorly. Like energy really bombed, and the Nasdaq is holding up. So this is a cool look at how to read the MACD and how to look at these bands. And what does it look like here on our huge bands is leading up to it. We got a lot of activity on the bull side, except for this crash here. We got activity on the bear side, but most of the band activity on the large scale is going to be along the top edge, and then it got choppy, and then all top edge here. And we broke down here out of the band, which is a good reversal signal. And then we're crossing over onto the bull side of the band here. And it's switching positive. So this looks bullish on the Nasdaq. Okay, I think that's probably good for the Nasdaq video. I don't know. I might go back on like the SPY and take a look at the Great Depression. I wonder if it'll paint bands around that, even though there's not really data. There's just kind of like green spotted data. I'll take a look on that chart and see what we get. So please hit the like button, and this is not investment advice. And yeah, I think that's good. Yeah, happy trading.